What's up, everybody? It's your old pal, Mr. Carly. I just want to make sure that we are rolling the way that we're supposed to be. Oh yeah. Okay. Here's the deal. Looking as grizzled as ever. Haven't had my face in a video in a while. So this is gonna be the review for the second 2/3 of Unit 2 for IB Geography Global Change. Global Change theme is the Paper 2 topical area, and we're talking about global climate change, and this is going to be about the impacts and then also the responses. If you ever need anything, know what you need to know. These are the things straight from the IB guide, formatted in a way that's hopefully more friendly for you. But there's three topics. We got causes, we've got impacts, and then we've got responses. So unless you're like Trey Beverly, you probably did your systems map, and you can kind of talk about how these things are impacted by climate change, and then how they impact each other. Because remember, geography is all about synthesis and thinking systemically or systematically. So there are some examples of some things. This is pretty small. Yeah. Also, we did a quick thing in class about this. We talked about, had a video on ocean transport routes. And then also I had this separate thing that I gave you, these little cards, and they're just short little readings about how these different aspects of human life are impacted by climate change. So make sure you kind of have a couple examples of food and agriculture, conflict, security, species migration, also plant migration, which we don't usually think about species, and then health impacts. All right. And then this is the third one. We have not done anything about civil society and corporate strategies yet, but you're going to do at least one case study and then hopefully share with some other people to look at some other examples. Okay, so in terms of the content, I can't go over every single thing that you need to know in a 15-minute video, but I'll give you kind of the broad strokes overview, things that are kind of asked about. So first off, we're talking about impacts. We're usually talking about issues of carbon, greenhouse gas emissions, typically carbon related to the carbon cycle. So in a perfect world, maybe it wouldn't be perfect because there wouldn't be a ton of human activity. But without human activity, you typically see a lot of carbon release via volcanoes and other pores in the earth, and then over time through plant photosynthesis and soil capture and carbon sinks in the ocean. The carbon would then be brought back in through carbon sinks, and it would kind of all balance itself out. But over time, what we found is that more and more carbon is getting released and stuck in the atmosphere via the enhanced greenhouse effect. This is also happening with methane. Water vapor is also a greenhouse gas, and chlorofluorocarbons as well to a smaller extent. So basically, carbon cycle, we talked about this as like a base understanding, but you got to understand that where the carbon goes, where it comes from and where it goes, and where it comes from, Cotton Eye Joe. So carbon is exchanged among the biosphere, which are living things, the hydrosphere, water, ice, and glaciers, and then the atmosphere, which are the gases that are held in place by Earth's gravitational pull. There's a nice YouTube video if you go to the slideshow and check it out. There's also a nice graphic here, which I'm not going to go into, but basically, oh yeah, there's a lithosphere too, but we don't really talk a ton about that. Release and storage of carbon, that's what the cycle is. You could spend a whole career studying that, but basically what you need to know is that there are carbon sinks. There are elements of the biosphere, hydrosphere, and atmosphere that store carbon dioxide. Here's some examples. Oceans are huge carbon sinks in the hydrosphere. Forests are huge carbon sinks in the biosphere because plants just gobble up all that carbon dioxide. And then ice sheets, glaciers are carbon sinks. They hold together with a higher albedo, and then also they're kind of stopping vegetation from growing. And then plankton, clouds are in the atmosphere as well. And then there's carbon sources, which are elements that release things: fossil fuel burning, the destruction of forests, and just the degradation of biomass in general releases greenhouse gases, particularly carbon dioxide, cellular respiration. Human cellular respiration, decaying vegetation, organic matter, and then livestock as well. So again, the greenhouse effect, the enhanced greenhouse effect, and the impacts of climate change has resulted in greater release of carbon over time, more so than can be effectively sequestered or sunk back to the atmosphere. So that's the basics of the carbon cycle. And then we talked about hydrosphere, so waters, ice, glaciers, and the oceans. Atmosphere, gas surrounding Earth, mostly talking about the troposphere. and biosphere, which are organisms on Earth and their collective habitats. Soil is a big part of the biosphere as well. It's a huge carbon sink. Rich, fertile soil with a lot of organic matter and biomass is going to be a carbon sink. Dried up desert soil, dried out, eroded, degraded soil, degraded soil is going to be not a carbon source, but it's not going to capture carbon as well. And we're going to look at health hazards, change in migration patterns, ocean transport routes. Here's the deal. Don't be like Trey Beverly and actually do your systems map. So there's different sources for this, but I'll give you a couple examples. And again, the reason we have these different arrows is because there's going to be differing impacts or connections that we can make. So for example, I'm just literally going off of the top of my head right now. As you have increased carbon dioxide sunk into the hydrosphere, particularly the oceans, you are going to have a decrease in plankton and other small organisms because the ocean will become more acidic. It's not as habitable. Habitable. That's not a word, right? Hospitable for plankton life, and then the water is going to become warmer too, which is going to cause issues, and that causes the destruction of plankton, and then that's going to lead to less carbon being stored by the plankton because they eat up matter that contains carbon dioxide, and that's going to cause further feedback issues. This is where feedback loops come into play here as well. As the atmosphere, degradation of organic matter, especially as vegetation dies and decays or breaks down, is going to lead to the release of greenhouse gases and carbon dioxide. That's going to lead to more capture of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, which is basically the greenhouse effect. So just thinking about how these things play a role with one another. Here are some different resources. They are still located on teams, so you can talk about what happens when ice melts and how that impacts the atmosphere, how sea level rise impacts the biosphere, things of that nature. Extreme weather events, so how climate change is impacting the atmosphere in relation to increases in extreme weather events, global warming in general, and then we had the biosphere resource as well. Species migration is important. As the climate changes in different places, you will literally see plant and animal life migrate. So that's a big deal as well. And then I showed those things at the beginning, but we want to also look at these aspects, which are more the human geographic aspects of things and how those are being impacted by climate change. So make sure you take a look at those. I guess I had some ideas. I'm going to skip those for now, though. We watched a video about ocean transport routes. So knowing how ocean transport routes are impacted, one big way is that it's opening up more ocean transport routes, which is leading to a lot of geopolitical tension. It also is going to impact the viability of certain shipping routes because as you have more extreme weather events, you're going to have issues of flooding, storms, things of that nature. And that's going to lead to maybe the closing of shipping routes as ports are destroyed or have to adapt. Yeah. Oh, last thing, you got the perspective of a specific country, not the model UN, but a specific country, and you had to look at how they're dealing with climate change and how they're impacted by climate change. So take a look at those. You should have at least learned about one or two other countries. So looking at kind of what low-income countries and high-income countries and middle-income countries are doing and how that relates to location, wealth, social, political differences. Risk perception is a little bit of a kind of outlier there in terms of just people that perceive the risk will take actions, people that won't, things like that. Okay, that's topic 2, all about the impacts. We kind of covered it. And again, if you check-a-rooney off the things on the cover sheet, you're probably in pretty good shape. I'm going to check my time right now. All right, so that was about half of the time. So I got 6 minutes for impacts. Might have to make a part 2 to this. We'll see. The camera just go away? Okay, anyway, I don't know what it's recording right now. It doesn't look like anything. Anyway, okay, whatever. Maybe it's fine. It's fine. All right, so this is topic 3. We also did the Model UN, and the purpose of the Model UN was to look at A, global scale solutions and some positives and negatives. B, looking at how you can do different mitigation adaptation efforts. And then then also looking at perspectives of different countries. So we try to have a difference in middle income, high income, low income countries. Some countries like the United States that were a little more ambivalent about climate change. Some like the UK who really wanted to step up and solve problems. Some like Russia who were stuck with the Soviet Union era apparently with their flag. So things like that. There's a good video about soil and its impact on climate change and how it represents the biosphere. You can take another look at that. Again, the slides are in Teams. So we talked a little bit at the beginning about disparities and what causes disparities in climate or responses to climate change and exposure. So we're looking at location, wealth, social differences, and risk perception. There's what they are, how your degree to which you can adapt, your sensitivity to it, and your exposure. Again, places that are going to have high disparities or high impacts compared to other places that have people that are dependents, very young and very old, people with disabilities, low income groups, refugees and forced migrants. Locations, places that are low-lying islands, river mouths, valleys, coastal areas, regions that derive water supplies from mountain glaciers, like Idaho. Things like that. This is on your note sheet, just taking a look at what the vulnerability looks like across different places. Again, it always the equator is a big source of issue with climate change. Then the next thing we talked about was response strategies. So the two big types of response strategies are adaptation, which is where you're not trying to deal with the root cause of the problem. You're not trying to stop emissions of greenhouse gases or change greenhouse gases. You're just trying to find ways to prevent or minimize the damage. These are going to be a little more short-term solutions. And then mitigation, which is actually reducing the severity of climate change through prevention methods. We looked at different types. So would these be adaptation or mitigation? Remember, if you're trying to decide which type they are, you're looking at, is it actually making things more resilient or is it addressing root causes of the greenhouse effect? So trying to stop the greenhouse effect from happening or just trying to deal with climate change as it comes up. Here's a video that talked about different ways that it can be solved and the 4 big areas of greenhouse gas emissions. So looking at transportation, energy, food production, and then industry and things that can be done. You did a research activity on your own where you're looking at different government-led responses. You had to do carbon trading and I think carbon sequestration, I think were the 2 that you had to do. And then you could pick different other types as well. You have a chart, so take a look at that. Let's see, Paris Climate Agreement, understanding the different agreements that they made for mitigation. Your reflection on the Model UN and how we tried to do resolutions and how that was efficient or inefficient, different perspectives of different countries, good things to bring in. Geoengineering, again, is using specific technology. They call it emerging technology because we're literally trying to manipulate the environment to manage the effects. And we looked at some different types as well. So here they are in this nice little infographic: fertilizing the ocean, planting more trees, pretty typical type, capturing CO2 in like giant air filters, desert surface albedo, so trying to cover desert surface with reflective sheets. Stratospheric aerosols is the most common one, releasing aerosols into the atmosphere that creates global dimming. And then space smears. So that's kind of like the big ones right now. Reducing carbon dioxide through capture or solar radiation management are the kind of the 2 big categories that they go into. These have a lot of downside effects, a lot of unknowns or uncertainties regarding them, and also going to be pretty expensive in the near term because they are emerging technologies. So there's a video about that. Here's all the stuff that we did in this unit, so it should all kind of be put together. That's it. That's kind of the broad overview of things that you want to make sure you understand and know about. If you have any questions, give me a comment or send me an email if you're my student. Other than that, that's a broad overview of Unit 2, Global Climate, Topics 2 and 3. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Let's keep those likes higher and those dislikes, and I'll talk to you later.